Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Kiyan.
And I'm John.
And this is Zenith, a podcast with a pet rock, because this week we watched The Harvest of Kairos.
Written by Ben Steed.
Directed by Gerald Blake.
And aired on February 4th, 1980.
Yeah, so here on Zenith, we're premiering live, not only making Blake 7's voice, but his name as well. We have an exclusive scoop right here.
Hello.
Yeah, so we're joined by John, the man behind the mask, so to speak.
The man, the myth, the legend, as you said.
The man, the myth, the legend.
I am a man, indeed. No, guys, I can't do the Jarvik voice for this long. I'm just going to be myself. I can't do the woman, you are beautiful for 45 minutes. It's not happening.
I mean, you got a good solid, 2 minutes out of it, and, that's more than I would ever get. So
more than I can usually sustain anything, so...
So, yeah, we're basically...
I was wondering, is this actually the sort of premiere of your, voice?
Has your voice premiered online anywhere before today?
Not in a Making Blake 7 context, but I have another Twitter account called WhoFX.
Okay.
And I have spoken to the guys on, I don't know if you've heard of it, Radio Free Skaro. It's quite a popular Doctor Who podcast.
Okay, yeah.
I think everyone listens to that one.
Yes, so they've had me on a few times. But this, I'm not trying to spoil your exclusive. This is the first time as making
Blake 7.
As making Blake 7, yeah. So this is a first.
Well, I think we just overplayed the premiere for comedic effect, really.
Right. I know I was planning on actually really trying to hype this up on Twitter, and I haven't done a good job of that so far because my internet has been really janky for the past week.
Well, this podcast episode doesn't go out for a week, so go ahead.
Yeah, true.
I can hype it up. I'll put some nice pictures online and get people listening. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because this is a year ahead for me because I'm doing Series B at the moment, so it was quite nice to actually skip forward and watch a Series C episode.
Right.
Even though it's this one.
Even though it's this one?
Of course, I love this one. I don't know if it's too soon for me to say that, but it is terrible, but it's really good as well. I should hate it, and I used to hate it, but I just love it now. I really do.
Oh, that's actually really surprising to me because I love this episode. This is one of my favorites.
Oh, great.
I like it.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Yeah, 'cause when it first came out on VHS, I mean, I have very vague memories of watching it when it was first on, but I just didn't like it at all. And then just over the years, I watched it a couple of times at university with friends, and we just laugh at it. And I think there is a lot of unintentional humor in here, but a lot of it is intentional, and it's just. I think it's really exciting, and a lot happens, and there's some pretty major moments in it. But I think it's just a lot of fun. It's just a very, very funny episode.
Well, that's exciting. I mean, I went into this episode in the first 5 minutes, and I was like, great, this episode was going to suck, isn't it? And then it didn't, so that's...
But everyone hates this episode. Absolutely. It's one of the most hated episodes. That's, I think, one of the great things about your podcast, that you're just coming at it fresh with no preconceived ideas, and there's been quite a few where you've just gone completely against the perceived wisdom, which is I think is great.
I mean, we tore Volcano.
yeah. Well, I was going to do that one with you, wasn't I? And of course I couldn't make it, but that's just like a very middle of the road episode, Volcano, isn't it? It's just not a lot goes on. So I deliberately chose that initially as one for us to do together, just as a bit of a challenge, really, but.
Right, and that's what I was just about to ask. Actually, is did you choose Volcano and then when that didn't sort of pan out, this one because they're sort of lukewarmly received episodes?
Well, there's a lot to talk about in this one. I mean, pretty much every scene has got something brilliant going on, and hilarious and colourful and stupid and brilliant. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack in this one, I think.
Well, so right off the bat, before we get into that, we should do our dumb little quiz questions that we started doing 2 weeks ago. So, who's going to go first this time?
You want to go first, John?
You want to take the bull by the horns, jump right in?
Absolutely. So, my question is, what color is the drink that Servalan and Jarvik have after their rendezvous, shall we say? So yeah, what color is the drink? It's the drink that they've got curly straws, which I just think is so 70s. It's brilliant.
We'll have a picture of that in the show notes because that gets a reference in Drano's email later on.
Right.
So we'll have a picture of that in the show notes, but don't look because it'll spoil the answer.
It's a striking image, curly straws in Blake 7.
All right, so
I'll go next. Mine is Servalan wears an asymmetrical outfit in this episode. Which side is the huge shoulder pad thing on?
Mine is slightly more complex. When the Liberator is leaving the planet at the start of the episode, which quadrant does it actually leave through? Is it the Alpha Quadrant, the Beta Quadrant, the Delta Quadrant, or the Gamma Quadrant? Mysterious. And that out of the way, now we can jump right into the plot of the episode, featuring Avon and Callie being completely MIA for the first, 5 minutes.
Right, how does this actually open? What's the first shot? I can't seem to remember.
The very first shot is a really nice model of the Liberator in orbit of the planet. I don't think it gets a name. It's the planet where Avon finds the rock.
Yeah, I don't think it gets a name.
Right.
It's quite a nice shot, and I just wanted to mention that because I always stick up for the visual effects in Blake 7, but there are some less impressive effects coming up. So I think it's, at least it starts well and then goes down in terms of effects, I think.
No, I really did like a lot of the model work in this, especially when the Liberator is spinning and they're like, whoa, it's
I made a note of that.
That is so good. Yeah, it's a great shot.
Because we never seen the Liberator spin like that before, so when it happened, I was like, whoa, something new for the Liberator to do. Because
and they pointed out, they draw a lot of attention to it. I think Servalan is like, whoa, it's spinning, or maybe it's Jarvik. I'm not sure.
Yes, well, that's Tarrant doing his space captain thing.
Yeah, it's Tarrant's episode, really, isn't it? He really is in charge here. He's just, when Servalan refers to the crew, it's Tarrant's crew, and Jarvik and Servalan. He's the main antagonist. They don't even mention Avon, and Tarrant's just basically giving everyone orders, and he's completely in charge, which is interesting. It's that part of the time in the season when they hadn't, I don't think, quite got the character dynamics sorted, so they were still working out the relationship between Tarrant and Avon and the others. But I think this is possibly the most dominant he is. But that could be because it's Ben Steed writing, and he likes male characters to be dominant.
Oh, yikes.
Well, there were, a few, at least, good character moments for Dana and Callie, Avon, Villa maybe to a lesser extent, but Dana at the end was fairly awesome. She had a fight scene, and she got some cool lines. Callie also with the Sopron and everything. Avon
just kicks it this whole episode. He just kicks back and relaxes, basically. I was going to say, it's a Tarrant episode, but to me it feels like the plucky young second in command is trying how to sea legs for the first time, trying to run the crew, and the captain's just sitting in the background watching, taking notes, criticizing his every move, which is really what's happening in this episode. Is Avon's just criticizing Tarrant all the way, but not actually doing anything about it.
Yeah, I loved Avon in this episode.
He's great. He's basically comic relief, isn't he? But I think you're right. He just lets Tarrant, he gives him enough rope to hang himself. But it's Avon who actually comes in at several key points in the episode and saves the day. And he just does it so casually. And Paul Darrow actually hated this script. He hated the way Avon was written. But I think just the way he plays it, even though Avon is so out of character in some ways, because it's Paul Darrow, he manages to make it seem quintessentially Avon in everything he does, and I just love it when he's playing with the rock and it explodes, and he's just like, "Oh, sorry." It's great.
There's so many just great casual Avon moments in this episode, including the final scene, which I thought was the best scene of this entire episode. But we're not quite there yet. I think what happens is the Liberator gets attacked before they leave this planet, and Servalan's in her I guess new space command, which is way dingier and more dilapidated than the previous space command.
Well, did you notice that? It's basically the same set. She got a new spaceship in Volcano that looked a bit like a shark flying through space, and they've used the same set to represent the inside of Space Command. So it's a bit it's a little bit confusing, really. But they do refer to it as Space Command, so it is still supposed to be the same place that we saw in the first 2 series. So it is a bit confusing, that I think.
Yeah, I don't know if I picked up on that. Did you?
No, I didn't recognize it was the same set. And frankly, I rarely ever recognize that things are the same set on the show. Because they do a pretty good job of actually disguising it, in my opinion.
That's just me watching it with my Making Blake 7 head on. I just can't help but notice these things that probably no one else would ever notice. But
well, Silverland's just trying the usual brute force attack on the Liberator, and
it's not really working. She's getting pretty mad, and then she learns that there's dissent in her ranks.
In the construction crew.
Right. I forget what this guy's name is, but sort of her I don't know what he is actually either. Now that I bring it up,
second in command.
He's called Dastor. Yeah, he's just some old fogey who's just hanging around. Now Travis is gone. That you'll find that Serverland basically has different hangers on in each episode. There's never anyone who recurs in more than one episode. So.
Right. I mean,
yeah,
he's just a note in this. I was like, is Jarvik the new Travis? But then Jarvik just eats it at the end of the episode. So I guess the answer to that question is no.
And we said the same thing about Maury as well in Volcano.
And then Maury ate it at the end of that episode too.
I don't think Jarvik's really dead. I think he was just stunned. I think just as the credits came in, I think he woke up maybe a second later and was, women, help me. The love of a good woman would have probably brought him around, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, Dana's not touching that with a 10-foot pole, and I doubt Callie's going to go anywhere near that either, so she's going to have to die on the Liberator, unloved and alone.
Oh.
But yeah, the Dastor is like, yo, some dude down in the construction ranks is like, any fool could take the Liberator with 3 ships, and she's like, who's this idiot? Bring him up here, let's talk with him. And they bring up Jarvik, and he's quite a character, shall we say.
What did you think of him? Did you like him?
He's kind of so comically over the top, I think you have to like him.
Yeah, I think the guy playing the part, his name's Andrew Burt, and he was not hugely famous, but he was quite a big name for Blake 7, I think. He used to be the lead actor in a soap opera we've got over here called Emmerdale Farm. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's still going.
Have never watched it.
It's still going today, and he was like the first star, and he recently left that, and he'd been in loads of other things as well. So he is definitely the big guest star of the episode. And I think he kind of plays against the lines in a way, because I think it's almost like the actor knows how ridiculous it is, and he just plays it in this really larger than life kind of way. But it's because of him that the episode is quite reviled by most fans, because he's just seen as incredibly sexist.
And I can see that.
Yeah, he is completely. Yeah. No, if you couldn't show this episode today, it's just beyond spoof, really. But to be honest, it's never really bothered me that much. But I can definitely see why people have a problem with it. But if you just think the character is ridiculous, if you just bear that in mind, it actually makes the whole episode very amusing, I think. But I think people have concerns about Ben Steed and his views, because I don't want to spoil anything that's coming up, but he does 2 more episodes after this one, and they're all about the battle of the sexes, and women never come out well, let's put it that way. So that is, I think, why people think this episode stinks a little bit.
Yeah, I can definitely see that in this episode, at least. I don't know what's coming up, but in this episode at least, there's definitely like a misogyny to that character. But he's also like a villain, right? Well, maybe not so much at the end with his, his quote unquote redemption with Tarrant being like he was more than just a thug or whatever, but he's also like, the antagonist of the episode. And I sort of feel the same way. It didn't necessarily bother me too much.
I mean, it didn't turn me off to the episode, but while I was watching it, I was like, Ben, what have you written here, Ben? Because like, I feel like they take it so far that they like Servalan goes completely out of character at some point, because at this point Jarvik like kisses her wildly, kind of almost reminded me of Sean Connery in basically any Bond movie.
Well, I was confused about this moment because I couldn't tell whether Jarvik was the one initiating that or whether it was Servalan, or I didn't know it was going. It was Jarvik, it turns out.
Yeah, Jarvik kind of just grabs her.
Yeah,
but later on, though, she says there is that small matter of the degrading act you subjected me to in the control room earlier. I would like you to do it again.
Right.
So that's a brilliant line, and it does make it like Servalan is in control. So that the first time he grabs her, you think, oh, God, her power is diminished. But it just turns out she really fancies him, and she wants a piece of the action. And throughout the episode, she's got his life in her hand. You know, she is still in charge. Okay, she gets thrown around a little bit. I better be careful what I say here. But but this is a new performance really from Jacqueline Pierce as Servalan. You know, Servalan has never seemed quite so sexual, and it's a really interesting performance. And I don't know if you guys know this, and Jacqueline Pierce has spoken very openly about this, so I'm not talking out of turn, but between the second series and the third series, she had this mad love affair. She went to America and she met a guy there, and although there'd been men in her life before and she'd been married, basically she had a sexual awakening. And so she just, that's why when she came back for the third series, Servalan is much more sensual and larger than life, and the costumes are even more outrageous, and the red nails and the lipstick, and that, I think it's at its peak in this episode that basically Jacqueline Pierce has just, let's just say, found another level to the character.
Yeah,
really sad. It's the guy she met in America turned out to be gay. Oh, she knew that going in. She knew that, so that it didn't quite work out because this small matter that he was gay, but it did the trick. It pepped her up, shall we say.
That's
you can edit that out.
Spicy, actually.
That is really fascinating. I don't think I didn't know anything about that.
No, I didn't know anything about that. But I think we've
read
mentioned
her autobiography because she goes into a lot of detail, and it is hilarious. It's brilliant. It's called I think From Byfleet to the Bush. I think you can get it from possibly Big Finish or.
Can I buy it on Amazon? That's the big question. Can I buy it on Amazon and have it shipped in 2 days?
Honestly, it's a fantastic read. She only talked about Blake Seven in passing because she can't really remember anything, but that doesn't matter. She's had a fascinating life, and she's very open, and I'd recommend it highly.
I mean, I feel like Servalan's always, to an extent, been a little bit sensual, because we've always talked on this show how it seems like there are like passing references or passing insinuations that Servalan like slept her way up to the top in some way. There's always like some guy who comes in and is like, "Oh, you're so pretty," and she's like, "Yeah, I know."
She's always been very tactile, hasn't she? Like, I think in the very first episode, is it Ray, the young guy who comes in, and there's a clear implication that there's been some kind of relationship there, but it's always been subtle and light, whereas here she's basically, and if you think about what she's like with Avon in Aftermath as well, she's much more forward, shall we say.
Yeah,
I mean, this one
is Servalan this week.
This one does, it features, I mean, by what I guess are 1980 standards, like, an explicit sort of sex scene, right? I mean, nothing's ever shown, but that's what that scene is. So
there's no doubt that they haven't just had a clinch; they've on more than one occasion as well. They basically can't wait to get out of that control room and into Servalan's quarters, basically.
So when Jarvik shows up, there's something interesting going on here because he's a construction grade, I think they call him, which is interesting. So what I thought was going to happen is something similar to, I think what Villa said in, I forget what it was, Volcano,
I think
possibly?
it was Volcano.
Where Villa...
He's like, I bought that rank.
Right, he goes, I bought that rank. So I thought they were going to go into detail about how Jarvik, is this like brilliant tactician or... some sort of mastermind, but his rank prevented him from ever doing anything with that. I mean, there's more to it than that. They don't really ever.
Well, he used to be a space captain.
Exactly.
Is the thing. He was Tarrant's commanding officer. Which, speaking of which, I went back and looked up what Tarrant actually told Avon in Power Play. And apparently, Tarrant told Avon that he deserted the Federation, but then he quote rejoined the Federation unquote, to fight the Andromedans. So I'd always assumed that the way Tarrant had said it to Avon that he had never been part of the Federation, but apparently he told Avon he deserted.
Yeah, I think that, he used to be a Federation officer, he deserted, he became a mercenary, and then the war broke out and he just basically jumped in. The thing is, Stephen Pacey was 22 when this episode was made.
That's how old I am.
Yeah, we're 22.
It's crazy, isn't it? That's young, and the character was originally supposed to be a lot older. It was the character was originally called the Captain, and that they were going to get somebody in their 50s to play it. And then they decided to bring that down to somebody who was about 35. And then...
undershot 35 by quite a bit there.
Well, apparently Stephen Pacey just turned up, and the production secretary just basically fell in love with him and said, you've got to hire him. And I think he's great in this episode. I think you can believe that he's older than 22. Mm-hmm. I think he's written as quite an arrogant character, but I think Stephen Pacey nicely underplays it. So Tarrant doesn't seem too cocky.
Well, there's sort of a foil type situation between him and Avon, at least that's sort of played up in this episode, right? He's a bit over the top in this episode, and Avon is more downplayed than really he ever has been.
Right. Well, that's because once again it's a Dell episode.
Yeah. Basically.
Yeah, this is the last time Tarrant is really seen as being in charge. And last week he was a bit bossy too, wasn't he? He was there's a bit of a vying for top dog spot between him and Avon. But from here on in, I mean, no spoilers, but it levels off, and Avon is without any doubt in charge, basically.
Probably because everybody on the Liberator crew watched Tarrant's performance in this story and were like, well, let's not do that anymore.
Yeah, doesn't do great, does he? Bless him.
And plus, I'm sure the next time there's a Chris Boucher script, it's going to be all Avon all day. No, I don't know.
Well, so Jarvik is like, well, here's my plan. I just need 3 ships, and I can just capture the Liberator. And Servalan's like, Servalan apparently just buys into this because I guess she's just so out of options at this point. She's like, yeah, whatever. You got 3 of the most advanced ships in my entire fleet.
Well, at this point, I think her ego is hurting a little bit. She's like, she doesn't want to admit that this is even a possibility. So she just goes, oh, okay, here are these ships. Go do your thing, and thinks that he's going to massively fail.
I mean, it's kind of a mirroring between Servalan and Avon almost. They both give these second-in-commands just complete control of their respective sides just to kind of watch them basically fall apart in key moments. Servalan's giving Jarvik the 3 ships he wants and basically free reign to do whatever. Avon's giving Tarrant basically free reign to do whatever with the Liberator as long as they go to Kairos. And so there's a lot of interesting mirroring going on between Avon and Servalan there, I think.
Right. We've talked about in previous weeks how Series C is touching on these points of like belief and how that leads to power and lies and what you can do with all of that. And this episode doesn't do that as much. But at the end, there's some very interesting stuff with that going on with the rock, the Sopron. And to me, in that sort of final moment, Avon and Jarvik are almost paralleled. But we'll get there.
I think it's really interesting that you've picked up on that theme. I've obviously been listening to the podcasts, and you've highlighted things I've never really noticed before, but it's definitely a big theme in this season, and it all culminates in the season finale. I obviously won't say anything about that, but it's the perception of what's real and what isn't, and the manipulation of that is definitely a key theme this season, and you've just really underlined that over the last couple of weeks. I'd never really thought to make that connection with Sopron as well, but it's definitely similar. Yeah,
it's been fascinating to me.
Avon's pet rock.
Yeah,
I love when they're down on that planet and they beam up and they're wearing these great respirators, these masks that are just barely managing to stay on their faces. I love those little costumes.
And what does Villa say when they get back? He's like, oh, if I knew I was just going to be carrying the bags, I would have never gone down. Something along those lines. Like that.
Yeah, and he said he would have worn thermal underwear, I think, or something like that. It was so cold out there.
Oh, right, Avon told him it was going to be Earth temperatures.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Keaton is given very little to do in this episode, but every line he does get, he nails it, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as always. We've always talked about how Villa's the most reasonable Liberator crew member. He's always the voice of reason, really. He's always the guy who's like, maybe we should take a step back. And then Avon's like, no! So, well, they decide to go to Kairos because they're like, man, we're going to get this sick rock. Sell it.
So on Kairos, they mine, I think it's called Kyropan.
Kyropan.
So that's
not to be confused with marzipan.
That's the harvest that the episode title refers to, and the orbit of the planet around its sun takes 15 Earth years, and there's only one harvest in that cycle.
Yeah, because you can't be on the planet outside the harvest because everybody who's on the planet outside the harvest dies. So, and they don't know what from. They just die.
I love the scene where they leave the laborers behind as well, because Servalan, they said that we've got too much Chiropan, we can't lift off. And Servalan's just leave the workers. She doesn't even give it a second thought. And then you've got one of the guards basically taunting them and say, well, you're just going to have to die. And then they take off and leave him there. I just think that is a great little scene.
And even the guards, they leave the guard behind too. And he's like, no, what? No.
Yeah, what? And when they filmed that, Gareth Thomas, who, as I'm sure you know, played Blake, he turned up because he was going out with the makeup designer at the time, Sheila Reese. So he just happened to turn up on location, and he even filmed a little kind of outtake where Blake gets zapped, but which is just it's a shame they didn't give him a proper cameo in the episode, but it might have been hard to work that into the narrative, I think.
Probably. Yeah, I wonder if we can find that online, that outtake.
Yeah, it's on the DVD.
I'm sure John has it somewhere, since he has like massive swaths of information on the production of Blake 7.
Yeah, well, just tune in next year when I get to that episode, and I'll share it then. But I'll send you a little screen grab. It's quite a nice little moment.
Sure.
Well, now imagining them having this running gag where they just film Gareth Thomas dying in every single episode, and then they just like insert it into the background with just Blake dying in the background of every episode, just like out of focus in the corner of your eye. You just see Blake keel over and die every episode.
Oh, that would have been great.
So this is actually related to my what would Blake do moment for this episode. My what would Blake do moment is that Blake wouldn't really take them to Kairos because he wouldn't see any reason to, because in this episode, Terrence and Avon, I think, are like, well, we're going to go Kairos because we're going to engage in a little piracy. We're going to make a little money. And Blake was never about the money. Blake was never about engaging in piracy. And so I think if Blake was in this situation, this story wouldn't have even happened because he wouldn't have gone anywhere near Kairos.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. But that's the thing about Series C. There is no, there's even, Tarrant even says it, doesn't he? There is no Federation anymore. So you've got to do something.
Well, when he says that, Villa's like, I think it's Villa, it might be Avon, is like, tell that to Servalan.
Yeah, I think it's Villa, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, they are this is the beginning of their kind of aimless period now, because the Federation is effectively, not destroyed, but it's on its, not exactly on its uppers. Yeah. But they don't do anything about it. They just, anyway, sorry, potential spoilers there. I'll stop talking.
They don't drive the knife through the heart and just wipe out the Federation for good. I mean,
no, they basically just
gun down Servalan
and
it's done.
Yeah, I think if Blake were still around, he would see that the Federation, or what Servalan has sort of rounded up, I guess you could say, is so, like you said, on life support, that they could, if they went for it
as hard as they did last season.
Yeah, exactly. They could just wipe them out.
I quite like the fact that they don't, because Avon's in charge. Although they all followed Blake initially, they are criminals, and in this season, now Blake's gone. They could easily have just said, "Well, we must follow in his footsteps," but they didn't. They're just a bunch of people who are sticking together for survival, and they're just, what are we going to do this week? How are we going to make more money? And I think that's quite nice that there is no crusade against the Federation. They're just a bunch of self-interested criminals flying about the galaxy in a fantastic spaceship. I think that's actually quite nice.
Well, there is this interesting inversion actually from Series A and B, because in Series B especially, because in Series B, Servalan's just like, oh, Blake's just a thorn on our side. He can't really do anything. He hasn't done anything major. And then there's this interesting swap almost, where Series C, the Federation is so just completely decimated that at this point it's actually the Federation that's the thorn in the Liberator crew's side. The Federation kind of just pokes and prods the Liberator like every couple of weeks, and then the Liberator just kind of shrugs it off. I mean, this week is the closest they've ever gotten to actually succeeding, but a lot of that is just down to Jarvik just being a complete lucky bastard, really.
But that's the great thing about this episode, isn't it? It's the closest Servalan has ever come. It's the first time we see her on the Liberator, and she basically wins. She takes the Liberator. The crew are left on a planet with no hope of survival or escape. It's pretty dramatic stuff.
I mean, it almost undermines Servalan completely, though, because at the end of the episode, the reason why she doesn't win is because she leaves because she believes the Sopran.
It's because of a bluff, and I love that. I love that.
And Jarvik like, Servalan, what are you doing?
Yes, Jarvik is the voice of the audience at that point, isn't he? He's like, are you crazy?
So basically,
they're trying to consult with Avon. Terrence wants to ask Avon whether he thinks it's a good idea to go after the Chirophan or not. And Avon's just like, do whatever you want, leave me alone.
Yeah, he's like, hang on, come over here. I just got Orak to admit that there's something smarter than him in the universe. He's like, hey guys, check this out. Orak's going to admit he's not the smartest being in the universe.
So Orak, this is sort of where we learn that the Sopran is alive in some sense. Well, that's what we learn now, at least.
Yeah, because Orak's like, yeah, in a sense, technically, maybe, marginally, it could be possibly slightly more intelligent than me. Barely.
Which Avon gets a total kick out of.
Well, and then he takes Callie away, doesn't he, as well? I mean, why on earth Callie goes with Avon when the ship is under attack is not really
I mean, but I love this scene because Jarvik's got his three Alpha 10s, I think they're called, or Class 10 pursuit ships attacking the Liberator. And Jarvik's like, oh, they've left their flank exposed or their rear exposed, so he shoots them and it causes like a whole ton of damage to the Liberator. And then Tennant is like, what the hell, guys? I told you to overlap the force wall. And then Dana's like, I didn't know how. And Tennant's like, didn't Callie show you? And he looks at Callie's gun and he's like, oh, god damn it. And he just like storms off the bridge because he knows exactly where Callie is and he knows exactly what's going on here.
Right, she's in a room with Avon, and they're
alone, and the lights are low, and
yeah, some really lovely, moody lighting in that scene. Yeah, and they actually are in a bit of a clinch, aren't they? When Tarrant comes in and he says something like, "Is now really the right time?"
Yeah. But Callie sees her parents. She, I guess, has some sort of psychic. She contacts the Sopran psychically or something like that.
She tries to contact the Sopran because Avon's like, well, it's alive, and she's like, no, it's not. I'm not getting anything, but I'm seeing my parents.
But she says it's thinking, and she's very freaked out by it. And
Callie spends a lot of time this series being freaked out by various different things, and you've only just seen the beginning of this. Basically, this is Jan Chappell now. Bless her, she just gets to be freaked out every episode by rocks or aliens or voices or anything, spiders, just you name it. She's just constantly freaked out.
Well, that was it was quite good actually in Shadow when she was scared and off doing her own thing because of her psychic abilities. There's like almost a horror vibe to that, right? She's this supernatural person. She has supernatural abilities, and when she's scared, that's at least to me, that's sort of a warning sign. Like this, she's scared of something with power, right?
Oh, you just wait. In a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to say no more. I keep dropping all these really unsubtle hints.
Just dropping these hints. Little breadcrumbs we're going to pick up on in a couple of weeks.
I think Jan Chappell, she's one of my favourite actresses in the series. I love Callie, but she's pretty poorly served generally. I mean, you're right, in Shadow, she's fantastic and she gets some good stuff to do, but generally speaking, although it's slightly better in Series C, I think she does at least get the central role in a couple of episodes. But she does spend a lot of time kind of staring into space and getting possessed and what have you.
I mean, last week it was Dawn of the Gods, and it was Shadow 2.0, where she detects a mysterious force and wakes up and she's like, what's going on? And then she gets there and she communicates psychically with a super powerful force. And
that was good though, because it related to her sort of backstory.
Yeah, I mean, it worked in the end.
Yeah.
But when it started, it was like, is this just Shadow again? Which, of course, you, John, haven't heard our episode on that since it won't go out for 2 more days.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued to know what you think of that one.
There was quite an argument that went down on that episode, actually.
It's another one that is generally pretty hated.
Oh, okay. Well, we liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the perception of Series C is that it starts very strongly, and then it has a major dip, and then it goes up, and you get some of the best episodes there have ever been. But I like them all pretty much.
Really, just been Volcano that we tore apart. Maybe we should do some more insightful tearing apart of these episodes.
No, I think it's great that you guys are generally pretty positive. You know, there are some podcasts where you just think, why are you even bothering to watch it? You know, just if you hate it so much, yeah.
Hey, there was a moment for us like that on Trust Your Doctor where every week we were just like, man, this sucks, man, this sucks. That was the Sixth Doctor's era, and we're like, man, this episode sucks, this episode sucks. Anyway, that's a story for another podcast.
Well, Colin Baker, you never know when he's going to pop up, do you?
Man, I really hope he pops up in Blake 7 at some point.
I mean, I already know, so.
Oh.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've spoiled, I think, a lot more than Dylan. Not everything, but I think more than Dylan has.
I mean, I've spoiled some pretty major things.
We both know how the entire show ends.
Yeah, I'm quite cross with you guys. You know, you've been dropping hints recently that you've been spoiled. I mean, you started off so fresh and not knowing anything, but it's so hard, isn't it?
It's really hard. I actually had the end of the show spoiled for me at the start of the show because I was looking for things. I was looking for things about Blake 7 that we could use as a name for this podcast, and I read an article that was like, Blake 7 is best if you know the ending, so the ending before you start, so here's how it ends. And I'm like, what?
But you haven't actually seen it, have you? You haven't actually seen. Yeah, okay.
No.
Good.
Plus, I don't know if I really agree with that it's better.
Well, I mean, that's something we can talk about when we get there.
Yeah.
To Blake. So what happens is these 3 pursuit ships that Jarvis got just blow up, and he's like, man, I really made that look convincing. And Servalan's like, yeah, I believed it. Those ships are destroyed. And Jarvik's like, yeah, they are. Really convincing, huh?
It was just one, wasn't it? They blow up one, and then the other 2
No, they blow up all 3.
Okay.
Yeah, all 3 are destroyed, yeah.
Okay.
They destroy the first one by firing through the force wall, and then Villa and Dana are really happy, and Tarrant comes in and is like, yes, but I was saving that trick for when I could get 2 of them in one blast. And Villa's like, oh, oops. But then there's only 2 of them. I love that
moment when Villa and Dana have a little hug because they're so pleased with themselves.
I mean, Villa, I'm sure, was really pleased with that hug, considering in Volcano he's been, quote, not noticing, unquote, Dana all the time.
Yeah.
So Tarrant, then that's when he does the spin maneuver. I'll try spinning. That's a good trick.
He's showing off at this point, isn't he?
A little bit.
He is. He's quite. Yeah. He gives Villa a cheeky little wink, and then he does that. You know, kind of blowing a kiss into the air as well. He's quite full of himself at this point.
But it works. So he can walk the walk and he can talk the talk. So
yeah. In that awful tracksuit that he's wearing.
Oh yeah, that was the first note I had for this episode. WTF is Tarrant wearing?
Well, this is the first episode with costumes designed by a guy called Nicky Rocker.
Okay.
And he was quite a flamboyant character, and he used to design dresses for Shirley Bassey.
Okay, that's a name I recognize.
So he basically just a big flamboyant costume designer. The cast, his name was Nicky Rocker, and the cast used to call him Rocky Knickers. And he had a reputation. I mean, the costumes in this are relatively tame compared to some of the stuff that comes later, but some of the costumes are terrible. I think Callie and Dana look great, but
Dana looks fantastic. Like that shade of blue she's wearing is just gorgeous, really.
There's her cleavage is like very exposed, and I'm sure Josette Simon wasn't a fan of that based on what she said about her experience on Blake 7.
Well, believe it or not, this was her favorite costume.
I believe it because it's a brilliant costume.
Yeah. And let's face it, Josette Simon could look great in a bin bag, couldn't she? Yeah, she could look great, whatever she's wearing. So, but yeah, in an interview back in the early 80s, she said that was her favorite outfit.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Whether or not she feels the same way now, we should maybe ask her.
Send her an email. Hey,
yeah,
Josette.
I'm sure she'd get back to me. Yeah, it's making Blake 7 here, Josette.
Making Blake 7 premier Twitter feed for Blake 7 behind the scenes information.
She used to be on Twitter, but she's not anymore. I think it might be because I kept tagging her photographs.
We might send her an email. We sent Sally Nivette an email. We got no response. We were like, the famous Blake 7 podcast, Zenith. Actually, no, we didn't sell ourselves that hard.
She's rejected my advances as well. I just don't think she's on Twitter that often. I think she's got an account, but she doesn't
Oh,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So we also sent a
I
message
tried-
to Stephen Grief. We also got no response from that.
Yeah, he's quite a bit more active. He's joined in some of the stuff I do on Twitter just occasionally. He's quite keen to relive old memories, but yeah, it's quite hard to get hold of the actors. It's sometimes you're better off with the writers and the directors and the effects guys. They're usually a bit more open to talking about it.
Right.
Right. I think you should turn your Twitter feed into a book, frankly. I think it would be a definitive account of what's going on Blake 7. I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks, actually, and I keep meaning to suggest it to you, but I think you should compile it all into like a book of some sort.
I think I'd like to do something with it, because at the end, maybe. I think there is another book in the works by somebody else at the moment. I don't know if you know Milk Publishing. I think that's how you pronounce it, MIWK. And they've been talking about doing quite a detailed production guide, so I think I'll wait and see what they do.
That's fair.
But we've almost got an unwritten agreement that if they'll do the book and I'll just keep doing what I do. But I'd like to do something with it. It just seems, because it's taken quite a long time, so it'd be nice to have something at the end of it.
I would buy it, your book.
Yeah. So
The problem is, of course, copyright is once you get into publishing something, it's quite tricky. Whereas on Twitter, because it's so ephemeral, I think you can get away with more.
Right.
I think the minute you start making money out of something and putting something in print, it's a bit dodgier. But we'll have to see.
We'll have to see. Anyway, back to the episode. They beam down to go steal some Chiropan, and well, they do that, but then it turns out there's
so they beam onto the transport
ship.
And can we just talk about these yellow boxes? These yellow human-shaped, human-sized boxes. You know, it's just maybe think to look inside. Just
No. We're not going to check out these suspicious boxes over here. We're just going to let them go.
With eye slits in them.
Well, now
they get attacked.
Here's my question, and this, I don't think the episode ever actually answers this. Were the guards that they run into placed there by Jarvik to sort of...
Yeah, that was my understanding of it.
Yeah, to throw them off guard, right? Otherwise, they might have checked the boxes.
Yeah, that's a great moment. I think they even addressed that, don't they, in the episode? But it does throw to light the fact he's willing to sacrifice, 8 people, whereas before he was saying he only used mutoids on the ships, whereas he seems quite happy to throw away the lives of 6, 8 people.
Right, there's this running thing in this episode where Jarvik constantly says that, he respects life and he isn't as willing as Servalan is to trust in computers, and he's like very humanist in a way.
Yeah, men deserve to die like men.
Right, and again, like there is a misogyny to that sort of humanism as well. Absolutely.
But it does give us the great moment where Avon just comes in and kills them all.
This is one of the best Avon moments, is they're all surrounded by the guards, and then Avon just comes in and guns them all down, and he just goes, "It was a distinct possibility, Terrence."
Yeah.
He holds his gun like a 6-shooter, as he always does.
Ah, yes, that does Avon hold it like a 6-shooter segment.
I love that segment. Yeah, he does, doesn't he? Yeah. And Stephen Pacey's face when Avon comes in as well, he's just like, yeah, I messed up.
Just the way Paul Dowd delivers that line about it being a distinct possibility, like he's just so disgusted with how Tarrant didn't even consider this. We also completely skipped over Avon's other scathing burn when Tarrant leaves with Callie, when he's like, "I was under the impression that this was the most powerful ship in the galaxy, and you were the most accomplished space captain in the galaxy," or something like that. And then right after he leaves, he says, "Or so I'm told," which I think is just brilliant.
Avon was great in this.
He's so good. Paul Dara is just great in everything, but he nails it in this.
Yeah, he does, especially with a script that he apparently didn't like, probably because Chris Boucher wasn't giving him all these incisive moments in the episode.
I think Chris Boucher might have had a couple of weeks holiday when this was going through, because there are just certain things that don't quite add up with other episodes. So it does feel like maybe he was busy working on his own script or something. It could have had a bit more of his eye on it, I think, just in terms of continuity and a few bits here and there, but it's still great.
Now, I've noticed in this episode, and this is actually something I've been meaning to bring up for a while now, but in this episode, Servalan actually goes on to Liberator for, I think, the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
Really, Jacqueline Pierce is the only one who calls Avon, right? Everyone else calls him Avon.
I guess.
I don't know if there's any funny behind-the-scenes stuff about that, whether Paul Darrow had anything to say about that or anything. So
I think it's just British accents. I've never really noticed that before. Maybe it's more obvious to you guys, but and I think because of Jacqueline Pearce's voice, she's quite sultry, and I think every time she says Avon, it's very kind of deliberately seductive, whereas maybe Tarrant isn't quite trying to seduce Avon. I don't know. Although
no, hey, we don't. Hang on, we don't know here.
There are certain parts of the internet that might not agree with you with us. The dark web.
The dark web. I mean, Villa is definitely trying to seduce Dana at this point. I think, him not noticing all the time. That hug, definitely. I think he went really in for it when it happened.
Yeah, they kind of touch upon that I'm doing it again. I'm so sorry. I keep dropping these really unsubtle hints, but yeah, it is a kind of a minor theme moving forward. This mild obsession that Villa has with Dana.
Is it like the minor theme of Villa being addicted to Soma?
It's even more minor than that. I think it's mentioned a couple more times, but yeah, I don't think it's got much of a chance somehow.
I think Villa's the only character who appears in every episode of this show.
Yeah,
actually.
He is. Yep.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
should really be called Villa 7. Let's be honest here.
I'd watch that.
So, I guess we can just skip ahead to the part where Servalan takes over because the three guys jump out of the boxes and corner the Liberator crew, and then Servalan basically strides onto the Liberator bridge. And I don't know, I just really love this moment seeing Servalan on the Liberator. It's the villain's one moment. The villain has invaded the supposed safe space that the heroes have basically occupied the entire show.
Right. And she's loving it as well. She's loving every minute, isn't she? She's like, "Oh, hello, Callie," and just the way she interacts with Zen as well. I think that's really nicely done, and yeah, it's definitely a great moment. And I'm going to do it one last time. It's a bit of a foreshadowing of stuff that might happen further down the line.
That might happen.
Why don't I just?
You should drop some fake hints in there somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Most of them have been fake. Yeah. Honestly.
Oh no.
Well, there is, I think, sort of a foreshadowy moment that's actually earlier in the episode when Jarvik brings up something from Servalan's past, how a friend of hers died or something like that. And even I don't know the full extent to which this is actually foreshadowing for what we learn about Servalan later, but I think there's something more to that.
I think it's just bad writing, It's like, when was the last time you felt the wind between your cheeks? When did you last grieve for a beloved friend? It's just, that's just Ben Steed bad writing.
Oh, ouch.
Or is it?
All right.
Where was Chris Boucher?
He was
Where was Chris?
Benidorm for a week with his wife, probably.
Chris was doing a Servalan and Jarvik himself this week.
Complete with the bendy straws.
I like to think so, yeah.
And when Servalan gets onto the Liberator, I just wanted to mention that Jacqueline Pearce is totally in her element here. This is really interesting because she's obviously a recurring character, obviously a main character on the show, but Servalan isn't really a character who interacts with, our main sort of cast all that much, right? There have been episodes here and there, but most of the time she's off doing her own thing, or she's with Travis, or was with Travis. But here she's totally just interacting with Paul Darrow, with acting with Stephen Pacey, everyone else. She's totally in her element, and it's awesome.
I think it might even be only the second time she's even met Villa, and she's very little interaction with most of them, and yeah, it's a great scene, and I love the way she just says almost straight away, "Oh, kill Dana." Just take her outside and kill her. And then Dana's like, "No, you'll have to do it here." And she's like, "Okay, kill her here." And I just think that's great. I think she sees Dana as a real threat. And there's a couple of times in the episode where she's just like, "Shoot her," which I think is quite interesting.
We talked about this in Aftermath, how it seemed like they were setting up Dana to be the foil to Servalan in much the same way that Blake and Travis had that kind
rivalry,
of antagonism going on. And this episode kind of seems to play off that, since Servalan comes in and immediately, instead of shooting any of the people she has been antagonized for the past 2 seasons, like Avon or Villa or Callie, she instead goes straight for Dana, and she's like, "Kill Dana."
Right. And Dana has the awesome moment where she's like, "You have to do it here." And Dana was cool in this episode. I think there's sort of a much needed expansion of Dana's character here, where she gets to do awesome things and say awesome things.
She's just such a great actress. She does quite a lot with so little, and I think she's definitely given slightly more to do here, and she's great.
I mean, she kind of almost saves the day at the end, not entirely, because Avon is mostly the driving force behind that.
Dana's definitely a part of it, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
At this point, Terrence doesn't really know what to do. He's sort of stumbling over his own words. He wants to talk it out. Avon eventually then steps up and he gives control of Zen to Servalan under one condition.
Yeah, that's such a great scene. I love that scene. So good.
She's like, no conditions. He's like, well, I've already started the sentence, so I got you. And she's like, well, I'll just kill your crew members. And then he's like, well, then what? You'll kill me too, and then you'll never finish the command. And she's like, damn, you got me.
So the condition...
Go on. Sorry.
No, go on.
I was just going to say, I love Paul Darrow's face when she says, when Zen says the nearest planet is Kairos. And Paul Darrow's face is like, oh, man.
He's like, damn, I didn't think this through enough.
Yeah. It's such a great twist.
And I think the very next thing, it cuts right to them.
It cuts right to them on Kairos, and then they're
like, oh man, what do we do now?
They're planning out which way to go, and Avon's just like, nope, forget me. I'll find my own way, my own salvation. He just walks off, and then Terrence kind of just looks at the other guys, and he's like, what the hell?
Now, this was weird to me. I'm not fully convinced that if Chris Boucher wrote this episode, or even if Terry Nation had written this episode, would Avon have done that?
Yeah, I think so.
You think so? I don't know.
Sorry, done what? Gone down to the planet?
No,
or?
Ditched the rest of the crew.
Gone off by himself.
Yeah, I think he would. Yeah, I think he's always been a bit of a loner, hasn't he? And they could potentially hold him back.
And that's what it's kind of been a running theme of Avon's character. Like, he only looks out for himself. And that was always the thing in series A and B, was like, is he going to kill Blake because he just wants to take the Liberator for himself? Like, he doesn't really believe in this cause, does he? And it's always been kind of a mystery about how much he actually cares about the Liberator crew and how much he actually just cares about this being a means to an end for him.
One thing I will say is this whole scenario, I'm doing it again. I said I wouldn't do it again. But all I will say is remember this in later episodes, this scenario. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Mysterious.
Is it going to be something that I'm going to have difficulty remembering, like the name of Bounty?
It's completely pointless that I said that because it will be long forgotten. But it is. There are definitely, whether intentional or not, there are themes and situations in this episode that are revisited, shall we say. I don't know if it was intentional, but it's very similar to something that happens later. Let's just put it that way.
Interesting. Every time we have a guest on this show, they drop a whole bunch of subtle hints to things we haven't seen yet.
And I hate it when people do that. I'm listening and I'm like, why is he doing that? Why is he trying to spoil it for guys? And yet here I am.
No, I actually think these hints have been sort of vague enough and actually good. Like, I'm pretty interested.
I hope so.
I feel like it's practically impossible not to drop hints like that when you know what's coming.
Yeah.
I do actually have one more, but I'll get to that in a minute.
Well, so we have this, what I think is just this amazing scene, I think, where Avon is just leaning against this warehouse, and all the rest of the people like run up because I guess they followed Avon, and Avon just turns to Tarrant and is like, so, Tarrant, tell me, what the hell is that? And he just points inside the warehouse, and there's just this Apollo 11 style moon lander. And I was like, where the hell did the BBC get this prop? Like, did they just film a series on like the moon landing or something? And they have this prop sitting around? Because I highly doubt Ben Steed wrote into the script, we see the Apollo 11 moon lander sitting in this warehouse.
Yeah, I think it was just written as just a space capsule of some kind. And I think Matt Irvin, the visual effects guy, because he was into real space missions and he'd done various documentaries and created the models for those. And I think he just happened to have that model on the shelf. And they just thought, oh, that'll do.
Well, it looks really cool. And, I was thinking, maybe BBC helped Kubrick stage the landing. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, it looks like a brilliant recreation of the actual lander. But when it appeared, it was just like so out of place in the Blake 7 universe, I think.
And it is to them,
out laughing.
It is out of place to them, too. They talk about it as if it's ancient technology, right? So.
They do, yeah. Like I say, it's a pre-space age something or other or something like that. Yeah.
And this is jumping ahead just a little bit, but there's something they completely just blow past with this lander is that when they take off, there's a roof above them that they do they do not mention when they're taking off.
No, they do say, because Avon says, Villa, get the roof open. And
oh, do they?
Like,
okay, I was going to say, because when I watched it, I missed that line. I was like, what? Did they
it's easy to miss. But yeah, Villa says, how the hell am I supposed to do that? And it's like, well, that's what you do, isn't it? You open doors. So something along those lines. So it is addressed, but it's not very clearly.
Well, so now, in my opinion, the plot falls apart a little bit because Servalan's like, yeah, if you want to sleep with me for the rest of your life, Jarvik, you need to go down and beat Tarrant one-on-one, mano-y-mano.
And also, if you want a position of power, but Jarvik, well, he's not in it for the power. He has, I'm forgetting the exact line, but he says if he wanted
to be a space captain, he would have stayed in the Space Command or something.
Yeah, right. But he goes down anyway. This is after right after I think the sort of sex scene between them.
It's just after they've had their I won't say the colour, their post-coital refreshment, shall we say.
And Servalan asks him, or she says she'll give him an entire team to even out the numbers, but he's like, nah, I'll go down myself.
And he goes down and he fights Tarrant, and as we expected, because Tarrant has done nothing but fall apart this episode, falls apart in this battle, although he does have the upper hand for a moment.
Guys, we haven't mentioned the Brian the Spider. We haven't mentioned the Spider.
Oh, no. Well, he shows up right now, I think.
Well, I think we'd seen it once before.
Yeah, when Jarvik first beams down, he sees it trundling.
We have to talk about the Spider.
I think it's bad, but the actual prop, if you up close, it doesn't look too bad. It's only when it's in long shot and you see that big Hoover bag going from side to side that it looks. I mean, it does look bad, but I actually think they spent quite a bit of money on it, and it was featured quite heavily in promotional photographs and what have you. And if you see still photographs of close up of the face, it actually looks okay for BBC sci-fi of the time, but it doesn't look great when it's walking around. There was a guy in one of the effects team in there who I think he had to walk on all fours backwards.
Oh no, man! Because I was going to say I really wanted to see like a side cutout view of how the people in that costume were oriented.
It wasn't just one. It was one guy, right? Just one.
It's just one guy. Yeah, it wasn't like a pantomime horse. It's just one guy. But there's some great outtakes of him just collapsing, and he couldn't get up again. But when they were on location and they unveiled his prop, Jan Chappell basically said, I can't do this anymore. They're just taking the piss out of us now. Sorry for my language, but this is just too much. And again, not wanting to spoil things, it made her very unhappy to be in the series.
Was this Spider what led to
No, I don't think it was just the Spider. I think it was the episode in general. I think a lot of the cast weren't happy with it. And then doing the location filming, this being unveiled, it was the final straw for Jan Chappell.
I'm imagining they pull up this trailer and they're playing this fanfare and there's this smoke and lights and they're like lowering down the back of the trailer and they're like, get ready to meet the Spider. And then the lights come up and it's this just sitting in the trailer. And then Jan Chappell just walks away. She's like, I'm done.
And you can actually even see, her acting on location, she's not engaged at all. There's a bit where Dana's the crap out of Jarvik, and she's just in the background, like, whatever.
Yeah, I saw this. She's just literally standing there, like as Dana's beating up Jarvik, and then Jarvik gets on top of Dana, and Callie just kind of stands there and looks at them like completely unenthused.
Yep.
I think it would have been great if the female crew members had just really definitively kicked his ass. Yeah. I think that would have been redeemed some of the more sexist elements. And they kind of do that. I think Dana was getting the upper hand, but it would have been nice if Callie had joined in as well and actually, become a bit more kick-ass like when she was first in the series. But I just think the motivation and the writing wasn't there. In fact, I'm surprised she's not just leaning against the wall having a cigarette. While that scene was being filmed because
drinking some Soma.
It is.
She's checked out by that stage. Bless her. She don't get me wrong. She gets re-energized in the coming episodes, but I think it was a low point for her. I think.
I don't blame her, frankly.
That's a good point. This is sort of a missed opportunity to have Dana and Callie sort of give Jarvik what's coming to him. So
Yeah, that would have been great.
But there's this scene also that I think we sort of glossed over, which they're sitting, I think, in the ship that they find, and Villa and Dana, I want to say, are sleeping. Or maybe it's Callie. And Avon is still sort of tinkering with the Sopron. And Terrent comes in, and he basically he dismisses the Sopron, as he has.
He's like, you're still playing with that damn rock.
And Avon's like, well, it's alive. And he sort of explains some of its ecology, almost how it's from the dark side of its planet, and that's why it looks and behaves like it does. And Terrent just dismisses it outright. And this is how, like, sort of in the rhetoric of this episode, you know that Terrent is not going to beat Jarvik, right? Because Jarvik and Avon both in this episode are characters, and I don't know how true this is of Avon in other episodes, but in this episode at least, both of them are characters who respect life. They don't put their full trust, at least, in computers. Avon does that in, as we'll see in a few minutes. But they both have like this strange almost like respect for life that Terrent just doesn't have.
But I don't even think Avon beats Jarvik.
Nobody
beats Jarvik. Jarvik just dies by sheer dumb unluckiness, really.
But there's also, this other sort of parallel between them is that they can both. Jarvik is the one who sees through this ruse later on. Mm-hmm. And Avon is the one who also, he gets what the Sopron is, and he respects it. Mm-hmm. So I definitely see the sort of parallels there. But right, as soon as, both from like the perspective of like what this story is, the rhetoric of the story, and just from the perspective of like Jarvik is, has like a foot on him and he can probably like beat the hell out of him, that Terrent's not going to win going into this fight.
Do you ever see where Jarvik throws the knife at Terrent's feet as well? Mm-hmm. When they first shot that, the knife actually went into Stephen Pacey's foot, but fortunately it only went into the boot. But it embedded itself firmly in the boot, and I think it might have like broken the flesh slightly. But I think that was a bit of a moment for the crew.
For Stephen Pacey being like, I didn't think I was going to lose my foot filming this show.
Yeah. And the outfit he's wearing as well. There's a quite a famous scene where I think they hear Dana crying out for help, and they all exit the hangar. Just the outfit Stephen Pacey's wearing. Let's just say it's quite revealing. I don't know if you want to feel compelled to go back and replay that scene, but it's interesting. Let's just put it that way.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time. I mean, Sovlan wasn't wearing a bra in this episode again. I think she's just discarded all her bras at this point.
Well, Jarvik also, not at this point in the episode, but when he was first introduced, had that shirt that was basically open down to the waist.
Super deep V-neck.
Yeah, you can't really blame Sutherland for falling for him. He's so irresistible 70s machismo, But yeah, I don't think Stephen Pacey was wearing underpants. I'd just put it that
way. Oh no.
I'm lowering the tone. Delete that bit. Erase that.
Well, so basically, Jarvik teleports up to the Liberator because
on top of Dana,
Brian the Spider starts approaching again. And
right.
Dana gets teleported up as well because she didn't take her teleporter bracelet off, because she was like, if you're going to take my bracelet off, you got to come get it from me.
Another awesome moment for Dana.
And then they get up to the ship and Surfland's like, I asked you to bring me all the bracelets. And he's like, yeah, I didn't. Surfland's like, I can't help but notice one of them is still attached to a person.
That's a great line, isn't it? Yeah, there's a body attached to this one. I love that. Yeah, that's so good.
And then basically Surfland orders Zen to just carpet bomb the planet, destroy what remains of the Liberator crew, and then Avon's like, Terrent, you've got like 5 seconds to get the ship off the ground.
Well, this is interesting to me because this isn't something we've really ever seen, I think, on Blake 7, is the idea that you can just bomb or shoot planets from space. Obviously they've had that capability, but they've never actually, I think, used it really.
They've mentioned it before, though. And I remember them mentioning it before, and now I'm trying to remember what episode it was in.
Well, I guess they had Space City in Shadow, didn't they, Callie?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think it was in Shadow, where they were like, we could bomb the planet, and they're like, no, we can't do that. We got to beam down.
Right. And they threaten
Yeah, they threatened
what's
to
his
blow up
name
Space,
in Shadow?
Yeah, Space City. So it's definitely been established before. We don't see any special effects for the surfer's bolt, as Zen calls it,
No.
flying down to the planet, probably because they realized they needed that budget of Brian the Spider.
But that's fine. I really actually like how that scene is done, and this is something we actually recently talked about on our Doctor Who podcast, Trust Your Doctor, is that a lot of shows, and Blake 7 included, and I think UFO actually does this as well, can make scenes of crew members just sitting in bridges at battle stations or whatever really interesting, even if there's no special effects or cool lasers or anything like that. So
yeah, no, I agree with that. But so then Avon and his buddies come flying up in this rickety old lander, but the Sopran makes it seem to Zen and Servalan like it's a ship that's even more powerful than the Liberator.
Right, Avon reveals what the Sopran is, and this was really interesting to me because it gives like this almost ecological edge to these questions of belief that this series is asking. So what the Sopran can do is it can mirror... he describes it, I think, as like a funhouse mirror or something like that, where it mirrors and distorts anything.
Your biggest fear, really. Or like, what attacks it, I think is what he says. Whatever attacks the Sopran, it mirrors and reflects it in like a stronger form.
Right, in a greater form. So that's why Callie saw her parents, and Orak saw a computer that was smarter than he was, and Zen sees...
a rock that it doesn't understand, but now it sees a ship.
Right. And there's this is how they try to fool Servalan, and there's this great line. To me, this line totally encapsulates what Series C is all about, and it is almost meta in a sense, because this is almost fundamental to what I think TV and movies really are. Avon says, the question is, what will Servalan see, and will she be fooled by it?
Well, I mean, it falls apart under closer inspection, in my opinion, because you have to really wonder why Servalan doesn't just turn to Tarrant and say, well, your ship's stronger than mine, why do you want the Liberator back?
Well, she is fooled by it, so and Jarvik is not. Jarvik is absolutely clued into what's going on.
I mean, but that's the thing. She gets fooled into thinking the capsule is stronger than the Liberator. I'm wondering why she doesn't then, because of that, turn to Tarrant when he's on the view screen and say, okay, your ship is stronger than mine. Why do you want the Liberator back then? Your ship's already stronger than the one I have.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder why she doesn't do that. She's completely taken in by this, and that's something that I think when I think the point of that is that she's not completely taken in, because if she was, she probably would have turned to him and been like, why do you want the Liberator then if your ship's stronger than mine?
But I guess all their stuff's in there, isn't it?
But what, the treasure room that we've never seen, that we still don't even know if it exists?
Oh, I wonder if Servalan knows about the treasure room.
Yeah, but that's all on there. Orak's still on there,
Yeah, but Avon's got the key to Orak.
Servalan could if she knew about the treasure room, could actually use that to like really empower herself and really get the Federation back on its feet. No, I'm not kidding. Like, based on what we've heard about it, at least.
You guys are obsessed with the treasure room.
Because the treasure room is awesome and we've never seen it.
Not yet.
Will we see the treasure room? This might be one of those fake hints. See, now I don't know. Now I don't know anymore.
Time will tell.
The treasure room was the first running joke we made on this podcast. As soon as they mentioned the treasure room, we started mentioning it like every week. Like, damn, we haven't seen that treasure room yet. I'm
so glad you mentioned it this week. I do like a running gag.
But Jarvik's like, no, don't believe it, Servalan. She's like, we should just evacuate. And so they leave, and then Jarvik just accidentally steps in front of a guard when he goes to shoot Callie and just gets gunned down. And I want to make a note
actually trying to save her, isn't he? I think he consciously is saving Dana's life. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's what I got out of it.
To me, it seems completely accidental. Like, he's over there and he's like, no, Servalan, we don't have to do that. And he turns to walk towards Servalan and he gets shot. And I also want to mention, what was his name? The guy who plays Jarvis?
Bert?
Jarvik, sorry. Andrew Burt. His acting kind of falls apart right at the end because he falls over and starts to die before the Federation guy's gun actually goes off. So he kind of anticipated that death before it happened.
Oversight, but...
They probably only had about 2 minutes left in studio, to be fair.
The lights are going off, security's coming in, like, you guys need to wrap it up, and Jarvik just turns around and falls over.
Well, I've just checked, and he basically, Servalan says to Captain Shad, kill Dana, and then Jarvik says, no, wait, there's no need to do that. And he does step in between, and then he expires.
And then Dana's like, if you kill me, who's going to operate the teleport? And Servalan's like, Orak will do it. And she's like, Avon's got the key.
Great, isn't it? Yeah, she keeps her cool, doesn't she, Dana? Always.
And then we just hard cut to the rest of the Liberator crew back on the Liberator.
Well, this is interesting to me because this is a scene where Dana is so close to Servalan and she can't do anything about it. And I hope this culminates in something greater at or near the end of this season. Because this is like, okay.
I've dropped enough hints. I'm not going to drop any more. But
well, because she could just easily grab this guard's gun and just gun them both down. And we know Dana has that skill.
Yeah, they pursue that theme further, let's just say that. And I think it's such a shame because Andrew Burt, he has his death scene and he falls, and I think he lands quite awkwardly. He's in a really weird position, but then he has to stay in that position for the rest. I mean, it's only for like 30 seconds, but by the end, he looks really uncomfortable because he's kind of all twisted and kind of like a fetal position.
There's a little bit of a humorous scene because we see the shuttle, the little space capsule approaching the Liberator. We have a voiceover from Avon going, are you going to be able to dock this thing? And Tarrant going, I think so.
It's like, I haven't thought that far ahead yet.
Yeah, I haven't thought that far ahead. And then we just hard smash cut to the Liberator crew walking onto the bridge and Avon just going, Zen, delete Servalan's voice print, and then they just leave.
The end.
Oh, they all like look at Jarvik's body and then they just kind of walk away.
Yeah, Avon almost kind of kicks the corpse. I think he just sort of like nudges it gently with his foot. And like Tarrant's like, he was a good man, and they was like, he was a thug.
Yeah, that line to me was weird because there's this entire idea at the end of this episode that these two guys who are the ones who they respect the Sopron, they respect life, they have this sort of ecological, like this eco-cognition almost. They're the ones who see through the bluff, and Servalan doesn't, and she's fooled by it, and she is... whether or not, that's a good point that you brought up, Dylan, whether or not she's completely fooled by it, it works against her. But at the very end of the episode, Avon's like, well, he was just a thug. But Tarrant is actually the one who goes like, no, he was more than that, and he sort of respects him at the end.
Well, probably because Tarrant knew
Tarrant knows him as well, but like when you think about it in the sense of like this overarching theme of Series C, I think there's some really interesting stuff going on here.
I think they respect each other because they're both men.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, in a sense, I'm glad Jarvik dies here because if he comes back, it easily just becomes another Travis and Blake situation. We've already drawn a lot of comparisons between Tarrant and Blake.
And he's a character that I think really overpowers this episode, which is fine for an episode, but maybe not for an entire series.
And he's also kind of like really misogynistic, which is okay for this episode. It doesn't, I think, tank the entire show, but can you imagine Jarvik coming back every week, beating on a woman every single week?
Yeah, I think one episode is enough. He's amazing, but I'm kind of glad he dies at the end.
I feel like Jarvik works in the same way that Brian Blessed's cult leader works in Cygnus Alpha. Like, he's just so over the top that you can't even possibly believe that this is a real person, and you just kind of just have to go with it. Like, Brian Blessed as the cult leader was just so completely over the top. It was like, is this even a real person?
Well, that one's interesting because, yes, that is a real person, and that is Brian Blessed.
He's just playing himself.
Now, John, you said this is the first episode you remember sort of seeing. What do you think? What was your sort of experience like with that? Well, I mean, a lifelong love, obviously, I guess.
I'm old, but I'm not that old. I only have very vague recollection of Blake 7 from its first broadcast. Like, I remember the last series reasonably well, but I was very, very young. But I really got into Blake 7 when the series first came out on VHS. So that would have been, I guess, in the early 90s. No, earlier than that, late 80s. That's when I really got into Blake 7 and just loved it from from then on. I do have very vague recollections of watching this episode. And I think I mentioned earlier in my recollection, I thought Jarvik was Blake, which is interesting. And he kind of looks like him when he in his second outfit. I can maybe see why I thought that. But yeah, when I first saw this episode when it came out on VHS, I didn't like it at all.
I feel like you must have been very confused later on when you realized Blake was supposed to be a good guy.
I mean, we're talking very slight recollections. There are just certain moments in the episode when I first saw it on VHS, I thought, oh, actually, I remember watching this when I was really little. But yeah, as I say, when I first saw it properly, I didn't like it, but I've just grown to love it over the years. And I'm really glad you guys seem to like it as well, because it took me years to really grow to love the episode. And it's like anything, the more you watch it, the rough edges become smoother, and you can laugh at the bits that are terrible. But the episode is laughing with you. I think it's just very high spirited, and every scene is funny and full of just great characters, and it really moves along. You know, it's a good piece of solid family TV entertainment. You know, it's not meant to be dissected like geeks like me 40 years later, but I think it's just solidly entertaining, and I think that's what I love about Blake 7. It wasn't just for the likes of us. It was massively popular back in the day. You know, it had amazing viewing figures. It was up against Coronation Street, which is another big soap opera over here. You know, it's Coronation Street. Doctor Who was up against Coronation Street for the last 3 years of its life, and that's partly what killed it off. Blake 7 more than held its own. It was getting 10 million viewers at prime time. It was a big popular success. And yeah, I think this is a really great example of that. And I'm really glad you guys like it. I thought you were going to be losing the will to live.
No, we've watched some pretty bad television for our podcast. We watched some pretty bad movies for our podcast, and trust me, this is nowhere even near any of some of the stuff we've watched.
But the series, the series is about to. The quality is going to take a big step up in the coming weeks, and it will dip again, obviously. But there are some really good episodes coming up, and you're going to enjoy them. But then you probably watch them. But you never know; you might hate them.
That's true. We might hate them.
Yeah, we've liked some. We've gone against the sort of established fan wisdom before, so who knows? I don't know.
But why is it established fan wisdom? We're technically fans, and we're just going against that grain. So I say fan wisdom is complete nonsense.
Well, yeah, I mean that's. I'm a true subjectivist, and I'm not going to get into like my literary theories and stuff like that. But that's one of my big problems with objectivism. Is it's all just opinion that's based on experience. But we don't have to get into that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's everyone gets different things out of it, and I just love the series so much that even the episodes I can see are not that great. It's still fun. It's still actors I really enjoy watching, and you can at least tell that people were trying. Because I'm so interested in the production side of it as well. There's always something to take from even the worst episodes, and sometimes they're so bad they're hilarious. So
over the top. No, they're hilarious.
Yeah, and I think there's only one or two that I could say is bad TV, but even they're still very entertaining. But I think it's a great series.
I mean, even having watched Volcano twice, I think Volcano's the only episode I'd say so far that I probably wouldn't go back and watch again.
Oh, I wouldn't go back and watch Aurak again.
Yeah, what is it with you guys and Aurak? That's a great episode.
Great episode. No.
It is. It's fantastic. What are you talking about?
I think we hyped ourselves up too much for the season finale, for the Series A finale.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, Blake 7 does great season finales. Yeah, definitely. And Aurak is probably the least of the four, I would say.
Right. That's what I've sort of read since watching that episode.
Great.
So I wanted to ask, and feel free to decline, but you, John, have access to a lot of info and pictures and making of just stuff in general that a lot of people have never seen before. Do you want to drop any hints, as vague as you want them to be, as to where you get your information or anything like that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I've been I've loved Blake Seven for years. As I say, I'm an old fart. So a lot of it is taken from just like, contemporary interviews at the time, or, articles that have been in fanzines over the years. There've been a couple of great books that have been written about Blake Seven. I used to do a printed fanzine many years ago. I interviewed quite a few people, and that also made a few connections there. And there's been a couple of people who prefer to remain nameless who've been really helpful in terms of getting hold of the original scripts. But yeah, the photographs have come from lots of different places, but there's one or two people who've been particularly helpful. And it's just been great to see these. I get excited by it too. These photographs that have never been published anywhere before. Mm-hmm. Because Blake Seven wasn't as long running as Doctor Who. With Doctor Who, because the magazine has been there for so many years, pretty much everything has been seen. Whereas with Blake Seven, it came and went 4 years, and a lot of this stuff just was never ever printed. And I think it's a great. The design in the series is so great. It's such a visual series. It's really nice to actually be sharing all this stuff, and that's really why I started doing the Twitter account. Really, I thought I can't just keep all this stuff to myself, so let's get it out there. I think some people get a bit frustrated that I'm releasing it piecemeal, but that's just because I'm trying to tell the whole story rather than just getting it all out there in one go. But yeah, occasionally people say, "Oh, can't you just give it all now?" And I say, "Oh, calm down, be patient." And I'm uncovering new stuff all the time as well. The more I'm doing the second series right now, and for each episode, and you do more and more research, and it's just amazing what is out there if you know the right people and piece it all together. Yeah, but there's new stuff coming up all the time, and it's amazing that this stuff has been hidden away for so long. And some of the photographs look like they've been, some of them are in terrible condition, so they need to be restored. They're covered in what looks like pubic hair and scratches, and so some of them look quite bad, but there's been some great people who've helped me clean them up and make them look as nice as possible. So yeah, it's just, and I love it as well. Even if I only had like 2 followers on Twitter, I'd probably still do it because I enjoy telling the story and finding out all this new stuff all the time. And yeah, so it's good fun.
Cool. And I mean, I'm sure you're told all the time, but it's awesome. Definitely one of my favorite Twitter accounts ever, I think.
Oh, thank you. That's good to hear. It's nice to get good feedback, and it's great that other people are enjoying it so much. And I guess that spurs me on.
And I like the format, by the way. Don't give it out all at once.
I don't think I can change the format, although it's stressful. And so I do try and get quite far ahead if possible. But there are some days when I'm really up against it because I basically tweet out what was happening 40 years ago exactly.
Yeah.
So sometimes they might have been filming 3 episodes in one day, and I'm like, I've got to write about this, and I've got a full-time job, and I like to think I've got a bit of a life as well. So it can be quite time consuming, but I'm doing okay. I'm at the moment I'm quite far ahead of the game, so the gap between seasons allows you to do a bit more planning and research, but it always catches up. It's a bit like when they were making the series, and the further they were getting into the series, they were only a couple of weeks ahead of the episodes actually being shown. So it feels like I'm almost not under the same kind of stress, but I can certainly sympathize with what they must have gone through. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Wouldn't be the end of the world if I was a few days late, I guess, but I haven't been so far.
City at the edge of the world, if you missed
it. Wow. Wow.
That was so neat. That was such a great segue. That was.
I don't actually have much more to say about this episode.
No, but I think we should give the
answers to the questions, unlike last week where we actually forgot to and had to go back and record the answers to the questions. So, John, since you asked your question first, you can, I think, go ahead and give the answer to your question first.
Okay. The colour of the drink that Servalan and Jarvik had after their encounter was... blue.
Right, gotta get that Star Wars money.
Blue
milk,
which has appeared on the show before.
They were drinking blue. It looks like when you wash your paintbrushes in water.
Yes.
That's what it looks like.
Oh God, I'm having flashbacks still, and I had to empty paint cans. Wait, this is actually a question. Do you know how they made that drink for them to drink on set?
Sadly, I did. It was milk with food coloring.
So it was actually blue milk.
Yeah, wow.
They put blue
milk,
food coloring
blue
in the
milk.
milk. Okay.
Do you
That's
know-
actually really interesting.
Do you know, this is something we talked about weeks ago when it showed up. Do you know what that green drink that Servalan was drinking was?
I think that might have been creme de menthe.
Okay.
Which is just, I don't know if you've heard of that before. It's like a really skanky drink that I think it was big in the 70s. I might be just making that up because I haven't got to those episodes yet, I don't think so. But that's the sort of stuff when I'm watching the episodes and I do my research, but then I go through the episodes as well. And I try and if there's something that jumps out that exactly like that, oh, I wonder what she was drinking, I do try and do a bit more research. So I think maybe I just haven't got to that one yet. But something in the back of my mind is telling me that it's creme de menthe. So they were probably all smashed out of their faces when they were filming those scenes.
I want to see them film an episode of Blake 7 where all the actors are just smashed drunk.
Drunk history, but
Drunk
drunk
7.
Well, I think they were in some. I think there was.
Jan Chappelle's just got a flask and she's slamming back vodka shots behind the scenes.
Well, there was one. Sorry, I'm going completely off subject, but when they were making Killer, Gareth Thomas and I think Ronald Lacey, who was playing the head of the Q base that they were on, they didn't think they would be needed again because there was loads of scenes that Paul Darrow and Michael Keating had to get through. And Gareth Thomas just said to Ronald Lacey, look, they're never going to get all that done. We'll just go to the bar. So they went to the bar and got absolutely, they had, I don't know how many drinks. And then they got the call from the studio saying, no, Paul Darrow and Michael Keating are done. You're on. So they had, and you can actually tell in the episode, Gareth Thomas is kind of slurring his words slightly. And it's because Paul Darrow had said to Michael Keating, come on, we've got to do this. Let's race through this just so we can screw Gareth over, basically.
Wow.
That's something I feel like I would do. Let's race through this so we can get them back. That's a good story,
I think it's a very Paul Darrow story as well, based on what I've heard about him behind the scenes.
Well, I know this because I'm researching that's where I'm at the moment, just when they're making Killer. So I think they had a lot of fun making that episode.
Yeah.
That was a fun episode to watch.
Yeah, that was a good episode.
Yeah, it's a good one, yeah.
So my question, just to remind you, is Servalan wears an asymmetrical outfit in this episode. Which side is the huge shoulder pad thing on? And it's on the right.
And then my question was, when the Liberator leaves the planet at the start of the episode, when it's being attacked by the Federation, what quadrant does it leave through? Alpha, Beta, Delta, or Gamma? And the answer was the Delta quadrant, although it's kind of a fake out because Servalan thinks they're going to go through the Alpha quadrant because that's what the computers are saying, but then they actually go through the Delta quadrant.
Right.
It would have been great if they'd seen like the Starship Voyager, like
the Voyager just flies by in the background, like, hey.
Weren't they in the Delta quadrant? I think they were. I don't know.
Yeah, it was the Delta quadrant because the Gamma quadrant was Deep Space Nine.
Yes, I'm not quite up on all the Star Trek stuff, so.
Yes, it was the Delta quadrant for Voyager.
Thought so.
Yeah, so I guess that wraps up everything about this episode in particular, unless you have anything else you want to say, John.
I'm spent.
I'm spent.
Harvest of Kairos, yeah, definitely. Like Jarvik after his encounter with Servalan, I'm spent.
Okay, well, we do have one email then to respond to this week from our usual correspondent, Sergeant Drano. John will be joining us in responding to this email. So I'm going to go ahead and read out the email. Subject line, The Harvest of Kairos. Hey guys, so the Harvest of Kairos. I bet you guys are really liking Tarrant now, right? Isn't he just the coolest, most awesome space captain ever? Even Servalan is afraid to attack him, on account of he's such a great space captain. So much better than that boring old Blake character, am I right? And Avon just can't hold a candle to the awesome pillar of charisma that is Space Captain Tarrant, leader of the Liberator. I think Villa sums up Tarrant pretty well. Bit of a know-it-all, aren't you? Avon does it one better. I understand that this ship is the most powerful in the galaxy and that you are the most astute space warfare commander. Or so you tell us often enough. Jarvik is great. I love the interplay between him and Servalan. Woman, you are beautiful. But first, there is the question of that degrading and primitive act to which I was subjected in the cold control room. I'd like you to do it again. Aw, yeah. Did you spot them celebrating their victory by slurping up some delicious blue milk with their silly straws? See attached. So like I said, we're going to put that picture in the show notes. Too bad his ticket gets punched by accident. He would have been a cool recurring character. At least he was never really bested by the Liberator crew. Avon's pet rock subplot was enjoyable. Did you spot where they were going with it, or did the twist with the Moonlander surprise you? All in all, another great episode. In my opinion, 7 out of 7. Sergeant Drano, Station 7, the door. So we found another person who loved this episode in Sergeant Drano who gave it a 7 out of 7.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased. Maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe everyone loves it. I'm delighted. I love it too.
You can put out a Twitter poll when you get there on your Twitter account. Do we love the Harvest of Kairos? Yes or no?
Yes or yes.
Yes or yes. Yes, but in red or something.
Yeah, I might do a special week of tweets about Harvest of Kairos, because it's there's a bit of a gap before the usual Twitter stuff takes off. So maybe I'll do a bit of hype and build up and make everyone love the episode as much as they should.
Make everyone love the episode.
Yeah.
Well, I think in regards to responding to Drano's email, I didn't see where the pet rock subplot was going, and like I said, I'm actually kind of glad Jarvik died off. I feel like he would have gotten really grating if he was here for like even just one more week.
Right.
Well, you do know that's not the last we see of the Sopron, right?
I didn't know that, but I know that now.
Yeah.
The season finale is actually called Sopron.
Is it?
And
Did I never notice this before?
And I don't want to spoil it, obviously, but basically the Rock... And I don't want to spoil it, but it does come into its own as the series progresses.
Interesting. It's basically the figurative 8 character.
It's Blake's 8 from here on. I can't do this to you guys. I'm making that up. It's never heard of again.
Wow.
So much like every other character brought onto the Liberator who's not a main character.
Pretty much.
Who is on the Liberator at the end of the episode, but then at the next episode is like mysteriously disappeared. Maybe the treasure room...
they never maintain those moon discs.
Maybe the treasure room is actually just like a room where they just store all the bodies of all the people who are on the Liberator at the end of the episode, but have disappeared by the next episode.
Maybe they're all just wandering around the corridors. Maybe
they're lost forever.
Yeah.
Yo, where's the moon disc? I want to see a moon disc Sopron spin-off, honestly. Let's see the Sopron interact with the moon disc, frankly.
Oh, that would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Moon disc, you are beautiful.
No, the moon disc is completely MIA off the Shadow, frankly. Callie brings one up as a pet, and she's like, "Look, if you just talk to it, it'll be fine." And then it's just gone.
But maybe that's off screen. It's an off screen adventure. Maybe Big Finish will do something with that. You know,
Big Finish, the Harvest of Moon Disc.
Yeah,
Moon Disc versus Sopron, like Batman v Superman, but Moon Disc and Sopron. Anyway,
that's you've got to write that. You should get the copyright on that. That's a great idea.
The Moon Disc versus Sopron.
Yeah, I'd pay to listen to that.
I'm sure with how much Big Finish tries to cash in, they'll jump on it eventually.
Snap that
in some
right
capacity.
away. Anyway, I think that brings us right to the end of this episode, which is usually where we plug ourselves. But before we do that, we'll let John here plug all of his everything wherever he wants to send our dear listener.
Next.
Yeah, if you want to, if you're on Twitter, by all means follow me. That would be great. It's at MakingBlake7, and it's basically an insane amount of trivia and rare pictures and what have you about the making of each episode as they were doing it 40 years ago. So that's it.
That's good. It's a great account.
Yeah,
I follow it.
It's awesome.
We follow it from the Decorative Vegetable account. And that account is how this very informative episode was set up. So thank you for coming on the show, John, actually.
No,
I really
I
appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I've really enjoyed it, and you keep up the good work with the podcast. I really enjoy listening to it every week. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Refreshing hearing fresh perspectives.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's, I think, potential for us to do it one more time, possibly in Series D sometime.
Oh, that's my favorite series. I'll be back in a heartbeat.
So if there's an episode you want to do, except for Orbit, which has already been claimed, just let us know. And
shall I let you know now, or shall we do that?
If you want to do it right now, if there's an episode you want to reserve right now, live on the air.
Oh, could I go for the first episode of Series 4? Is that too? Yeah, is that too key an episode though? Would you guys rather do that one?
No. Any episode is available to you, except, like I said, Orbit, which has already been claimed by Sergeant Drano. So if you'd like to be on for Rescue, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah,
it's my favorite episode of Blake 7.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. We'll set up all the logistics of that off recording, I think.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And anyway, if you would like to email us, any of you dear listeners, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com with your questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on the Harvest of Kairos and the Chiropan and the Sopron, and everything seems to end in on or an in this show. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Zenith. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook. Trust your doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're watching City at the Edge of the World. But until then, the end.